welcome back to the CCO Follow podcast. If you are watching this, you already noticed that we're missing someone. Arthur was not able to be with us today, and so today I'm here with Julie Bradshaw, and we're going to be talking about dating engagement, the first episode in this series for this month. Really excited to talk with you about this subject, Julie, and to be able to talk about our own dating experiences as well as the dating experience of when you have kids who start dating.
Yes.
As the saying goes, you know, you marry your spouse's parents in a way as well, and it goes the other way around too. Like you are essentially having to get to know, you know, this person that your kid brought into your life,
right? Becoming maybe kicking part of your family.
Yeah, and I'm very excited for that. We have kids. You know, we realized our oldest turned 9 2 months ago now, and so as I keep reminding Alicia, he's halfway to adulthood. Yeah, it's like not even just driving, just adulthood, and that's crazy. And so you've experienced that and more. Yeah. And so I guess to kick things off as we're starting this subject of dating engagement, what was your dating experience like?
I had a couple of boyfriends, kind of like high school and then college, that were long-term. I didn't do a lot of, you know, experiential, I guess you might call it.
Date over a weekend and break up quickly.
Yeah. And I would say that the high school experience was not very healthy. Part of that could be, I didn't grow up in a Christian home, so I didn't have a lot of solid lesson, example, guidance that way. But what I thought I would share is the college dating. It was end of high school, beginning of college, was a really terrific Christian young man. We had a great relationship, a lot of trust and respect between us. And we talked about getting married.
Like right away?
Not necessarily right away, but it became the conversation of, you know, the someday.
Is this going somewhere?
Yeah, the someday conversations, and that we were just kind of young, you know, at that point. But really, I fully believed that we would end up married. We enjoyed each other's families a lot. There was great relationship there. But what became evident when I was listening to that little feeling in my gut was that although he was a wonderful person and he loved Jesus, he wasn't the right person for me to spend my life with. And that's a tough thing sometimes.
You have so much emotional vested interest.
Yeah, for sure. And the, you know, the fears of in your mind, you think you see where direction you're going, and then to go, oh gosh, well, what if that's not it? Then there's some fear there and whatnot. So, but the great news about that is that then I met Pete, and it was just evident right away because, you know, obviously, you know, solid in the Lord, great partnership we had together, awesome family, and it did feel like that those puzzle pieces really fit together. Yeah. And so I guess what I say there, and I've seen other, you know, as my friends and I talk about with our kids when they're going through things and they would be dating somebody that should I marry this person or not? It's just one of those conversations of, it's not just the checklist, but it's really the heart check of, is this the right person for me? And I think, you know, we say pray about it. Obviously, you pray about these things, but the reality is too, if we're going to pray and ask the Lord if this is the right person for me, we have to be willing to listen to what he says, right? Because we want it to be a certain answer. Yeah. But the reality, and you alluded to this, is, in the prayer that we prayed before we started, that we don't want to partner with the wrong person just to have a person. Yeah, just have anyone. Yeah. So,
and it is really tempting to like settle in the sense of just like, well, they're a Christian and that's good enough, right? And so just everything else goes. Right. That must have been really hard. You know, I love this book by Gary Thomas called The Sacred Search. And one of the things he really encourages is like, even up till the wedding day, he's like, it is not wrong to back out and realize that you were making the wrong decision. Yep. And, you know, that takes a lot of bravery to be dating someone for so long, to have those serious conversations, and then to be like, no, this is wrong, but you're able to meet Pete through that.
Exactly.
I was
going to bring up that book, actually.
Oh, really?
It's a great book.
Yeah, and he has a follow-up. I don't know if you know, from Sacred Marriage. Oh. It's my favorite marriage book ever.
Well, I didn't realize that, but yes,
there's two
definitely.
different ones.
Well, there's also Sacred Parenting.
Yes,
but that's a whole other topic. One,
but he's a great author.
Yes, great books.
Now, I'm pretty sure this is a decently leading question, so I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this. Do you regret dating the guy who you dated before Pete?
No, I don't. And I say that because so much of what we experience is just learning. It's growth.
Yeah.
You know, as a person, as a believer, as a partner. You know, I think there's this romanticized idea that you're going to wait until you find the right person and date them and marry them and never have any other experience, you know, which maybe that sounds really appealing, and it happens.
Yeah.
I can say that I was Pete's first girlfriend. But I don't think we have to do that in order to have a godly experience. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the problem that I think we tend to go to, is we go to these extremes where either people are encouraged to date everyone, anybody, you know, and every
test
weekend.
It all out.
Exactly. And it's like kicking tires, and it's like, you know, well, how are you going to know if you actually like them unless you start dating? And it's like, well, yes, but that doesn't mean you just date every single person who's breathing and you just go down the lines. But then we can also go to the other extreme where it's like, you should not date until you're basically already sure that there's a person you're marrying. It's like, okay, let's back up a second. Like, that's way too much. And so that's why I want to ask that, because I think, you know, you made clear that you don't agree with the one extreme, that you just should, you know, just date like a
tasting chocolates door. Or something.
But it's important that we don't. Doing. Yeah, right. Tasting chocolates is fine. But then the opposite is also not okay. That would just give this message of like, you wait to date until you know it's the person that you're going to marry.
You've created a lot of pressure on yourself, on other people, and even put God in a box maybe in some ways by doing that.
Which, back to the other thing you mentioned of just how sometimes we pray, but we don't really want the answer. We can but for some reason in the praying, we think, well, that means God's blessing what I'm doing because I asked, right? And it's like, well, you asked without listening. So no, not really. That is a really tough spot we tend to put ourselves in over and over again with different things. But, for sure. So that was your dating experience, which ended up extremely successful.
Well, I would say it's been 30 years now.
There you go. 30 years. That's awesome. Congratulations.
It is awesome. Thank you.
But then you guys had kids and you had to go through the process of experiencing some of them dating as well. Are they all married now?
We have 3 out of the 4 married.
Okay.
Yep.
And has the 4th one dated some?
Yes. Okay. The 4th one has had some experience dating.
So you've had some, every single one of them. And I'm curious, I guess, to start with, what were some of maybe the big differences between seeing each of them date? Because I mean, every kid is different, and the people they're around are different, so it changes just their experience as a whole. Like, was one of them just coming to you in tears every day of some some person? Then the other ones are just like they got married the next day. What was that like?
There wasn't a ton of intense emotion around it. I would think and pray that it's because we never wanted them to put too much into a dating relationship. You know. There were a couple that dated in high school, but let's see. Tucker started right after high school and then dated through college before he got married. I think Becca was dating for 1 year exactly before they got engaged.
Nice.
Jake's was maybe a year and a half of dating, but I don't know, to answer your question, I think you almost answered it when you just said, everybody's experience is a little bit different with how they approach life and how I feel like our kids were pretty independent, that they didn't have to have a relationship to feel like their life was full or complete.
Which is important. I mean, that's why we covered singleness last month before we covered dating engagement, is because we don't want to make this, we don't want to perpetuate the idea that it's like, well, man was not meant to be alone, and therefore if you're not married, something's wrong with you. And it's like, that's not right. That's not healthy.
One thing is one of our kids in high school dated somebody that was not a Christian, and really, really super great guy, great family. We enjoyed and appreciated all of them. But that was, of course, a big topic of conversation. Now, I'll preface kind of our philosophy or whatever is not to have a lot of rules. That's just kind of how we want to approach things. It was more important to us to have open conversations. And and like you were saying, each child being a little bit different, rather than having a blanket rule of this is the age or this is what it's going to look like. We just didn't want it to be a set of rules, but rather some conversations about, each individual situation
Yeah.
and what the Lord is speaking to you
Yeah.
and what is important to you and why are you feeling that this is how you want to do things. And so anyway, having a non-Christian boyfriend was definitely fodder for a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
I think we were less nervous knowing that she was too young to move forward to marry this person.
Yeah.
But it just brought up different conversations.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to handle even the same kid when they are 16. You have different kind of restrictions around their dating relationship than when they're 20. Because it's like, you're not in a place to be getting married in the next couple of years. So there's no need for certain things.
And also, though, I will say this, just because somebody is a Christian or a believer doesn't necessarily mean you don't have those same conversations.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So we're all human.
Yeah. When would you say those conversations started? Was it when they just were like, hey, I want to date this person? Or was it like earlier you started some conversations?
Well, gosh, I think so much of that depends on when they come to you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, does your kid come to you and say, in all honesty, we were not as prepared for this stage of life as we should have been.
Oh, I don't think anyone can be. So,
and so our oldest came to us beginning of sophomore year and said, hey, I have a girlfriend.
Yeah,
and we were like, whoa, okay, we weren't prepared for this. We
Yeah.
needed to have done some homework
Yeah.
first, some legwork.
Were they driving yet?
No, not
You were
driving
like,
quite
so
yet.
how are you getting to said girlfriend?
So of course it was like, oh, okay, we're in fast gear here to
Yeah.
start having some of these conversations. But, and that's just because that was the kid who just doesn't share a ton. You really have to pull things out.
Yeah. And so if you didn't happen to think of that strand, you're suddenly
So,
laid on you.
Right. So, anyhow, I think it really just depended on the kid in terms of, when they started sharing things or when you start noticing, conversations are happening and things like that with the other sex. So.
Yeah, which is extremely different for each kid. I mean, kids can be, I know personally, just because of like my life, I knew I wanted to be a dad when I was in like 4th, 5th grade and like waiting when to be a dad. And then eventually it's thrown in there of like, oh, I guess that means I have to have a wife too. Like, I guess fine, we'll add that in.
It's kind of an important
kids
element.
are all different. Yeah. And so they definitely have different times where certain conversations happen.
Yeah.
What was it like, interacting with the one your kid was dating with?
Just in general or a specific one?
No, just in general. Yeah. I don't want to even have any,
Yeah. I mean, I will say it has always felt like, and this is just how we always want to be towards anybody, is so welcoming and warm. And our home is a place where you can be, because of course that's where you're going to get to know people, is when you can have those times together. And it's not a forced, well, let's go have lunch together and we'll grill you.
Yeah.
As
and
much
there's like
as,
the start and end time, and there's
like if you're hanging out at our home, then we're getting a feel for who you are. And
over board games and coffee.
Yes, exactly. And then of course, when I say we didn't have a ton of rules, I guess what I mean is like, this is the age you can date, this is what you can do, but of course we had things like the doors aren't closed and somebody's always home and kind of those safety things, which I felt like it was important for my kids to recognize this isn't because we don't trust you. This is because we don't want you to have to be in a situation where you're not even sure you can trust yourself. That we just recognize that we're fallible, that we don't, that we need accountability. Yeah. And so not even having them have to be in a situation that could lead to tough decision making at that early stage. So I just wanted them to know it's not that we don't trust you, because then you feel like then they're just going to sneak around potentially, or it leads to that kind of tension. Yeah. But that we're in this with you and we want you to be successful. Yeah.
Too harsh of consequences and borderlines oftentimes just make kids trickier and sneakier and not actually like compliant.
Right. Yeah.
And ultimately, I mean, you want their heart because, you can set up guardrails at home. It doesn't mean that those same guardrails are going to be set up anywhere else.
It's all about the heart.
That's great that you're able to keep it from within your 4 walls, but if that's all you're doing is creating, Fort Knox. Well, great. Fort Knox ends at the door. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So that's a difficult place to be.
Yeah.
Curious, you talked about guarding guarding them from like physical temptation and stuff like that. How did you help guide them through? And this could apply to someone who's dating themselves, but also parents who are trying to help their kids walk through it. How did you help them walk through guarding their hearts and their minds, not just like their bodies, but to guard themselves from premature just like commitment? Yeah. And like, oh, I'm not letting go of this. And it's like, okay, you're 15. You need to let like, Cause I mean, you had to specifically walk through that. Someone who you dated very, you were already talking about marriage and you had to let it go. Right. Like how have you helped, your kids with that?
Well, overarching, and I probably should have said this from the beginning, but there's so much prayer involved, right? And that's just because obviously the Lord is the one who can speak to our hearts and who knows.
Ultimately, we can't control our kids. You lead a horse to water, but they choose to drink, and ultimately they have to have their own walk with God.
And I think, and that's it right there, that I think so much we want our kids to have their identity in Christ. And when they have their identity in Christ, they're not out searching for value and worth and identity in somebody else or in a relationship in general. And I just think that's the foundation, is just encouraging that sincere understanding and acknowledgement that who we are in Christ is where our value comes from, and that we don't need what we think is the security of a relationship or somebody who, quote, loves us, know, that we obviously our home and our having a 2-parent home and parents that both love and support our kids was a blessing that we were able to provide, with God's mercy and help. But I think that's the biggest piece, is just having them know that God's plan for us is so rich that oftentimes it involves a partner, a life partner. And he just adds to the richness, but it's not the foundation of who we are.
Absolutely.
And those are, what I'm saying is an overarching idea. Obviously there are little pieces of that you have to invest each day and each week and each month and each year. But I think that's really the key. Yeah.
Did you guys ever have to, I mean, this is that idea of, you need to be complete in God alone, like all that kind of foundational, just being a Christian, first, not a girlfriend or boyfriend first.
Right.
Did you guys ever, and obviously, don't need to give details, but did you guys ever have to have more than just kind of that background, encouragement? Did you ever have to have a moment of like, you are becoming more of a boyfriend than you are, or a girlfriend more than you are a Christian? And like, this is impacting like your walk. Like, did you ever have to do that?
I think what comes to mind when you ask that question is a hard conversation of, I know you're getting really serious, and there isn't anybody else in your life that will ask you these questions and knows you well enough. And so we're going to do that for you right now.
Totally.
And so in this relationship, here are some things that we've observed. And we just want to share them with you so that you can really ask yourself the hard questions and really pray over these things. And with that, the hard part is you don't want them to feel that means that you're judging, that you're not supportive of the relationship. And so I would say that was one of the trickiest things, is that fine line there with, like I said, nobody else is going to ask those questions. Everybody else is going to just want to see the, quote, happy ending, but it's like, if you have any concerns or qualms, this is a time to address those.
Yeah. That's how you get to a happy ending.
Yes, exactly.
You don't
the real
just
happy
end up
ending.
There. Yeah.
Not just the picture perfect.
For a wedding day. And then,
right. So I think that was an important role as parents that I felt we took on, just wanting the very best for our kids and being willing to say, this isn't about whether or not we love you or support you. And also to let them know the decision that you make, we're on board 100%. When you make that decision, we are welcoming that person. That is your decision. You're an adult. We're here to support you. But before that happens, we're willing to ask those hard questions.
You have opportunity to choose.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
once
you were
you've
saying.
chosen, it's chosen. Yep. Yeah. We have at least we used to have, I don't think we have it anymore, a framed thing that says, choose your love and then love your choice. And it's like, after you've chosen and you actually have chosen, like to the actual wedding day, it's like, all right, well, your choice is now done.
Exactly.
Like,
the conversation changes at that point, right?
And now it's like, how do you love this person regardless, because it's now chosen. It's now set.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's really hard.
And with that though, I mean, right there, I think just identifies how careful and important it is, right? That decision is. And just that hits home, I think, when you're young and you're in love and you feel like you see the future ahead of you and it's so exciting. It's that whole concept of not choosing in a hurry or because of what you hope or foresee.
Yeah.
But truly knowing this is the choice you're making.
Yeah. Don't choose the person that you think they're going to become or how you could change them, or because that's not the person they are.
Right. Right.
And honestly, I mean, like we've been doing a lot of pre-marriage counseling recently. And the reality is that person's going to change multiple times. So you also have to choose to love the person that they're going to become, and you don't know who that person is going to be exactly. And they are going to change.
Yeah.
Curious, in many ways, the conversation has been around helping them not go too fast and to really investigate. Have you ever experienced the opposite, where it's like they're just getting cold feet and you're just like, it's okay, like this person's not perfect, or yes, you don't know the future? Because I think that can happen the opposite too, where it's like, everything's great, but it's like, but what if? And that just paralyzes some people.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I have a dear friend who's, we were friends in high school, so she's my age. And she dated a man for 7 years.
Wow.
And he asked her to marry him, and she couldn't say yes.
Oh, no.
But he was willing to wait.
Wow.
They continued dating for 7 years, didn't live together.
So that's 14 at this count.
That's what? No, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
okay.
7 total.
Oh, okay.
7 total.
That's good. I was like, wow, this is like a story of Jacob all over again. First 7 and another 7. And it's like, man.
But in the end, she had to break it off. And watching from the sidelines, there was a point where I was really feeling like maybe you're just walking in fear.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
He's shown his commitment to you. He was a good man, and he loved the Lord, and kind of all those things that that are really important. And so it was just hard. I really didn't know how to encourage, or even not to say advise her, but guide or, offer insight. I didn't know, because of course I can't make that decision for her. Nobody can. And ultimately she had to make that right decision. But boy, was that hard as an onlooker to feel like, are you just expecting something that isn't realistic?
Yeah, totally. Or just not possible. I mean, if your fear is, well, I don't know the future, it's like, well, guess what? You're not going to.
Right.
And so, that is very difficult.
What I would say is, she made that decision to cut it off. And I think, honestly, they could have gotten married and had a wonderful marriage, as we know, it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
However, I give her credit, because like you just said, choose your love and make your choice, or no, make your choice and choose your
choose your love your choice.
Yes, choose your love and love your choice. And I think she began to recognize that she may not have been capable
of choosing
ongoing loving that choice for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So maybe she also recognized
there's just a lot more self-awareness rather than concerned about him, or self-awareness about herself.
Yeah. So anyway, every situation is different, but there's a toughness there of trying to think too hard and plan too hard. And there's an element of faith here. We got to trust the Lord,
Well, and that self-awareness she had, I mean, especially the majority of people who are dating, they are somewhere between, 18 and 26 when you don't really know who you are and you're still developing as a person. And it's kind of crazy to think about you're having to not only make this choice about this other person, but while you're also trying to figure out who you are. Yeah. Totally. And enough, self reflection and be able to be like, oh, okay, like, is this even the right choice? For me, can I make this long-term decision?
Right. To know yourself well enough to recognize
if you can where do that. That's a hard place to be.
Yeah. It's a good question to ask, because it's reality. Yeah. It was reality for her for a long time.
I know in my own experience of dating, obviously I had my parents, but I also relied heavily on like a youth leader who was close to me, even after I graduated high school. For yourself, and then also with the experience of your kids, did you have the same, or was it pretty much just your parents and maybe your close friends, or was there maybe an older friend, whether it be youth leader or someone you just connected to, and for yourself, and then the same for your kids? Did they have that, and how was that? Did you communicate with this person? I don't know, you don't want to share some things, but did you communicate with this person if they did have that person, and what was that dynamic like?
So, did I communicate with the person that my kids looked to?
So like my parents knew my youth leader.
Oh, okay.
And so I actually don't know. Now I'm curious to ask
so
them
the
if they had
were there.
some back, behind my back conversations. I knew if they did, it would have been completely kind and charitable.
Of course.
But,
I did not have a solid faith-based nor continuous marriage example in my family. So, I guess in some ways that's an example of something, right? Not necessarily what
at
we
least
want,
one of the many roads you shouldn't go down, but it doesn't necessarily help find the right one.
Right. And so my young life mentor was really important and instrumental for me.
Yeah.
She and her husband both.
That's awesome.
And so, that was really meaningful and
it's
important.
really cool how God, when, just does that,
Yes.
how he puts people in your life that, help shore up areas. I mean, that's really the community of the church, and why we emphasize so much community. Because even if you did have, godly parents, great example, as a teenager, you might not listen to them anyway.
I know.
And what a blessing it is to know that we can put ourselves in this community that our kids naturally and supernaturally, by God's grace, get connected with people who help them. But you were saying, sorry.
Yeah.
This young life
Pete's
couple.
parents, were married for years and years, and until the day his dad passed away. So they were just a wonderful example for us both, actually. Even after we got married, I completely looked to them in a lot of ways too. And for our kids, they did have they ended up going to youth group at a local church down closer to where we live on the east side, and the youth pastor there was really significant, especially to our boys. And I think that is so valuable. Like you said, it's not the parents. And so sometimes the weight of what they say falls a little heavier.
Falls a little harder.
Yeah. So I think that's really key. And I'll just say, we've met with couples over the years, and specifically one right now that when I met her, she was a single mom. And so it's been a number of years that we've walked together, and now she's married to her little girl's dad. And they've got challenges to face, but they are ready and willing. And so I feel like we get to be in a position for them of an example of just not perfect, but healthy, marriage, a happy marriage. So like you said, God just puts people in our lives, whatever side you're on, be willing to see his plan and engage and make it meaningful, God puts
and your kids, like, they had an example of godly parents and a marriage in front of them. Did they also find people within the church or groups that they were part of that were able to speak in their life during dating and things?
Yeah. And I think, even in college too, when they would meet with,
that's
people,
even more difficult because they're like going away and having to like restart all these friend groups, and you're like,
I know you had
these
people.
Yeah, you had good influences here, but what about now?
Yeah,
that's hard.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's the Lord, right? We just got to pray and trust, letting them fly from the nest. But yes, they attended church at school and were able. Well, Tucker went down to Calvary Chapel Bible College, and he really his growth and his faith exploded down there. It was awesome. But even the others, just finding a church that they appreciated, where there were mentors, and small groups and things like that. Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
No,
and
we didn't really have conversations with those people so much. When
you didn't really
here
know
we did
them.
in town, but not down there.
Yeah, and that's part of the hard part of all that. But I mean, as you continue conversations with your kids, you will be like, oh, where'd you get that? Oh, well, so-and-so, was encouraging me in this way. And you can either be like, yes, that's wonderful. Or like, you might reconsider that person or maybe this thing they told you.
For sure.
It's not like you are just completely blind when you don't necessarily know the person. Things come out and it helps. So that's awesome.
Yeah, you definitely want to, I guess, vet out the mentors in your kids' lives in some way if you can, or at least help them recognize.
Yeah, if nothing else, I mean, you actively helping them vet is really helpful, especially when they're younger, but ultimately helping them learn how to vet is kind of the ultimate goal. And you're hoping that, it's kind of like the classic when you're training someone to do something. It's like, you watch me do it and we'll talk about it. And then I'll watch you do it and we'll talk about it. And we'll do it together.
You do it.
Yeah. And I'll watch from afar and go, oh no.
Wait, let's back up to step 2.
Right. Let's just scrap all that and start over. What advice would you give to someone who is currently dating? Now, when you guys dated, and even when I dated, like, the world was just very different, and everything was just very different when it came to dating and expectations and all the different things. But you've experienced, kids recently date.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's, in that age group, of, dating, or even just, season of life where they're dating? What advice would you give to them generally?
Well, it's not going to be anything super practical in terms of use social media apps or don't use dating apps. I mean, I just don't have any experience, right? Yeah. But I feel like it comes back to having relationships with people that you trust, who will have the conversations, who you feel you can open up to with a question that may be hard to ask, or you may feel that you might be judged for this question. To have those people, find them that you can have those conversations with, because if we don't ask the hard questions, they become hard situations.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's tweetable.
And so I really think, be around the person that you're dating, around other people. I think that's really important, not only to see how this person or potential partner or partner treats other people, talks about other people, talks to other people, but also then for them to be able to have insight for how they see this person treat you. And, I also feel like, watch how they treat their family, their parents, no matter how old they are. See how they interact with children. Whether or not you want to have children is still just indicative, I think, of a heart. Yeah,
totally. It's just a very different, you're basically trying to see them in extreme situations.
Exactly.
Like, the normal thing of everyday life, the, kids who will not necessarily listen to you or engage with you naturally, or all these different things. The strangers, the people they're comfortable with, the family, the friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And, hopefully you can experience a situation that, is maybe stressful, so that you can see how that plays out. How do they handle that, and how do they react to you, and all those things. So I don't know if that's even helpful. It's kind of around and around a circle, but the idea being relationships with others, conversations, hard conversations. And insight that you can gain from people you trust, and people who know you, and people who know them.
Yeah, absolutely. I always encourage, when I did high school, all the couples are like, oh, we're going to camp. This is great. And it's like, no, you're not a couple at camp. I was like, but you can gain wonderful insight at camp. You get to see them interact with people they probably don't like very much. You get to see them when they're overtired and having to deal with a youth leader, an authority figure who's telling you to do something they don't want to do when they're overtired and hungry. Like, great opportunity to actually get to know them, but not a time to date.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good, Travis.
But and what would you say? You mentioned earlier on about when your kids started dating, it kind of was just like, oh, we were not prepared for this moment. Like, this just happened. What would you say to parents who are entering that, maybe about to enter that with their kids? If you could go back, how would you prepare? Is there anything that would, in your mind, help prepare?
I think it would have just been the talking about things earlier. When your kid's in middle school, you're not really thinking about them dating. But that's probably the time to really begin to think about, do you picture yourself having a girlfriend someday? Oh, what does that look like? Or you just begin those conversations so that then it's not random or out of the blue if something comes up, I think that would have been a big part of it. It
starts it so that maybe they don't come to you a few months after they start dating someone, because then they're having to start the conversation. Instead, you're starting the conversation.
Right.
So when it becomes relevant, they're like,
there's this foundation.
Yeah, we've already started this, so I'm just going to continue the conversation.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Comfortable. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I would go back and do.
Yeah. So we both loved the books by Gary Thomas.
Yeah.
Sacred Search, Sacred Marriage, and now Sacred Parenting, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Are there any other books about dating or anything like that you remember? Or I know I'm putting you on the spot there. I didn't ask that ahead of time. But seemed like you were a very big book person. So.
Well, I will say there was, I don't even know the title, but just a book. It was something about questions to ask your partner or whatever. Okay. So it was just a book of questions, which
that's cool.
It's probably me. I'm a verbal processor. I like the whole, you can see conversation has been a big topic for me. I just imagine you with Pete
like pulling out of your person like, so
right. I just love, questions just... A specific question might not even be important, but it might lead to a conversation that you may not have had otherwise.
Yeah.
So I love things like that. It's just like, what is important in your life? What are your dreams? What are you, having those topics of conversation. So I can't remember the name of it, but it probably doesn't matter. You could find anything like that.
Yeah, I'll have to find something like that. I do like that about the Sacred Search is at the end of each chapter, there's probably 5 to 10 questions each chapter. And had a few different couples come to me and be like, what do we even talk about? And I'm like, well, here's, like 5 or 6 big rock things. But also this book, honestly, if you just read the questions at the end of the chapter, that's a good starting point. And read the rest of the book, for the good content too. But that's
and
awesome.
The other thing about the questions, the book that I had was they were lighthearted, a lot of them, but it just sometimes gave you something to talk about when you decided to go for a walk or you're on a date or whatever.
We had, Alicia and I talked a lot, and walking ended up just being our normal date was just walking and talking. And ironically, I think we'll talk about this on another episode, but I think one of the most like intense, like big, life questions I ever asked her that was like, this is a deal breaker. Like, you know what I mean? Was we were walking around Tacoma, and had I thought about that could have led up to a very long, awkward drive home.
True.
So,
depending on the
if
reply.
you're having these conversations, consider where you are and how quickly you cannot be with the person if it goes south.
That is such a good point. Just in terms of dating in general, like make sure that you're comfortable with where you are and what you're doing before you enter into a difficult topic.
You're rock climbing. You're like, so what do you think about kids?
And then you have to spend the next 2 hours in this awkward.
Not fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Julie.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure.
It's been such a great time talking to you. And although Arthur wasn't here, I think we were able to, have a great conversation.
Right.
I think so.
We missed him.
He'll be proud.
We missed him a lot.
We did, but he'll be very proud. So, so very thankful to have you on. Very thankful to start off this month so strong and to be able to talk to you about not only your experience, but also your experience with kids. 'Cause I think that's, it's cool being able in one person get all these different perspectives, about dating, just because the reality is that each dating experience is going to be so different, but the end goal is the same. And so the question is like, how do you get there, and how do you do it in a way that honors God and blesses you and the person you're dating? And
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but hopefully at least again brings up conversations and questions for people, and and they have people they can reach out to if they want to talk.
Absolutely.
And I'd be happy to be one if somebody wanted.
Hey, so her number is kidding. But you will find her on Sundays. Just seek her out. But
look for Noah. You'll find me there.
Exactly, right?
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate you guys listening. If you do have any questions, we do now have a area you can submit your questions at cavrioli.com/follow podcast. You can also ask questions on the social media platforms that Arthur posts these on. But we will be finishing out this month of November with this topic of dating engagement. So this is just episode 1 of that month. We'd love to have you the rest of this month as we continue this topic. So we look forward to seeing the next episode. God bless and have a great day.